And it's 11:26 on this Monday, and it's now time for the Quatrini Law Group with offices in Uniontown and Somerset, as well as Greensburg, specializing in personal injury, workers' compensation, Social Security disability, long-term disability, and veterans benefits. Their phone number is 888-534-6016. And today we are joined by Joyce Novotny Prettyman and Jeff Monzo. Welcome, guys.
Well, thank you. It's nice to be with you this morning. As you indicated, we are from Quatrini Law Group. My name is Jeff Monzo, and I'm here with Joyce Novotny Prettyman. We have an office in Uniontown, and we are here from the personal injury division at Quatrini Law Group. Joyce and I work in that division with our newest attorney, James Miller. So the three of us handle personal injury cases. And Joyce and I are going to talk first about what you should be thinking about if you are unfortunately involved in an auto accident. So Joyce, what do you think the first thing that we see our clients and do or not do sometimes that they should do?
So it's great to be here this morning, and it's nice to be able to talk with the audience about some things that you should do right at the scene of an auto accident, because so many times, Jeffrey, as you know, when we talk to folks, they've never been in a car accident before. It's an extremely stressful situation, and unless you have a little bit of an idea beforehand what to do, many people don't come away from that first on-scene experience with the information and the documentation they need so that we can help them as best as possible.
Yeah, I know one of the things that we see folks involved in an accident, and they are not at fault, the other driver is at fault, and they talk to the other driver, and the other driver says, "Oh, we can move the cars. We're okay. No need to call the police." And we always want you to call the police if you're involved in an accident. The police may say to you they're not coming out, but you should at least make that call.
Right. I think a lot of people will actually do their best to just try to get their car home, even though it's really not road worthy. And that can create a safety issue in and of itself. So calling the police is the best way to start. You're also obviously having an awful lot of adrenaline that's going on at that time. So you should, if there's any concern about anyone being injured, you should also call for an ambulance so that you have emergency personnel present right there at the scene. Those folks have been in that situation before, so they're certainly able to identify if you should be going to the emergency room.
Yeah, and you also, as Joyce said, there's so much going on, adrenaline is flowing, you're scared, but get all the information you can from the other driver. We all have cell phones, and if you don't have a piece of paper and a pen, put all the information about the other driver, a name, phone number, license plate. Hopefully you can get some insurance information from the other driver as well, but certainly you want to write that down. And we see folks that need to get witness information too.
Right. And if you don't record that witness information, those folks are going to be lost forever, and they can be a make or break piece of what happens during the claim process, because those witnesses are obviously people that don't really have any bias one way or another. They're simply going to tell you what they saw. If they have to wait any significant amount of time for the police, they're most likely not going to do that. Everybody's busy these days, and so if you can take a picture of their license, or picture of them, the witness, even a picture of the other driver, anything that you can take a picture of at the scene, you should do that, because those folks can be very invaluable as you move forward with the legal process. So many times you'll have people who are a witness at the accident, and they will be very interested in leaving as soon as possible, and they won't even want to leave a name and a phone number. So if you're fortunate enough to get someone that will give you their contact information, make sure that you are able to document that, especially if the police don't come, Jeffrey, right? Because who's going to gather the information if the police officer is not there?
Right, because so many times we see that whose fault the accident was is a question. Lots of times it isn't, but sometimes it is. And if you're not able to recreate what happened or have people that saw what happened come in and say whose fault it actually was, it can be really challenging to bring a claim for that person. So, and Joyce mentioned calling an ambulance. If for some reason that doesn't happen, you should still get looked at no matter what. Lots of times when you're in a car accident, we see clients that initially didn't think they were injured because adrenaline is flowing and there's a lot on your mind. You're scared. Life happens. But we always encourage clients to be seen.
Right. Even if it's, you get home from the scene and you're able to have someone else drive you to the emergency room, because so many times, even if it's not that very moment at the scene that you're having pain, you'll have people that definitely experience pain if it's stiffness, headaches, all kinds of symptoms that can happen within the hours or even days after something happens. So you shouldn't tough it out because it's so important not only for the legal process to document what's going on, but also as far as just your general well-being. You will get better more quickly if you're able to get to a doctor and get the guidance you need to get the appropriate treatment sooner rather than later.
Yeah, we see so many people with head and neck injuries that they may just think they have a headache and they're not going to go see a concussion specialist or go to their PCP to talk to them about maybe some symptoms, or they're just not feeling like themselves or feeling foggy or tired or a faint headache. And lots of times doctors can certainly help you alleviate those symptoms to make you feel better and be able to function. So
yeah, I think concussion symptoms, Jeffrey, are certainly something that we see that they are more of a nuanced type of presentation as far as symptoms. So, for example, if you have a CT scan at the emergency room and you don't have a brain bleed, thank heaven, that does not mean that you don't have a concussion. And those symptoms aren't necessarily something that the emergency room is going to pick up on because they're looking at you for, an hour or two. And so if you, again, additionally, sensitivity to sound, sensitivity to light, being forgetful, not being able to find words that you found easily, or maybe being in the car and feeling like you don't have the sense of direction that you did before. Those things can be very subtle symptoms, but concussion treatment has come such a long way in the last 15 to 20 years that you want to make sure that you get the treatment that you need, and you have a concussion specialist that can give you that specific protocol to follow.
And that certainly goes for other injuries as well, too. Joyce and I see all the time that somebody may have hurt their knee. Your knee goes into the dashboard or your shoulder or something like that. And all the emergency room and what they should be doing for you there is x-raying to make sure that you don't have any fractures. But there's lots of other things that could be wrong with your knee or your shoulder. And we see it all the time where somebody will have a torn ligament in their knee or a torn rotator cuff, and they just think it's sore, and the hospital said there was nothing fractured. So that's why you really need to follow up with your PCP, who will help you decide whether or not you need to follow up with an orthopedic specialist if it's a shoulder or knee, or a concussion specialist, as we were talking about, if it's concussion. So
once you get through that initial process of what to do at the scene, we always are talking to people about insurance coverage issues, because you can turn to your own auto insurance immediately for certain coverages. If it's a claim against the at-fault driver, that's a one-time lump sum settlement that's further down the road. But if you take a look at your coverage before something bad happens, that will allow you to be prepared. Hopefully you won't need to get into this type of a situation, but you're prepared before something happens. And it was occurring to me, we were talking before the show started, that we're coming up on daylight savings time. And that's always just a good reminder that maybe you just need to check on some things. And I think that your auto insurance coverage is a good thing to check on at this time of the year. So what kinds of things would you be looking for, Jeffrey, if you're looking at your insurance coverage for your car?
Well, one of the first things that you want to look at for sure is whether or not you have an election to make. It's called a tort election, and you're your insurance representative is going to talk to you about either electing full tort or limited tort. And we cannot encourage you enough to purchase the full tort, even if that's not recommended to you by your insurance company. You definitely want to purchase full tort. Why is that, Joyce?
So with full tort, you have the ability to have the remedies, all of the remedies that the law allows. Sometimes people think, well, it's not my fault, so why are my legal remedies limited? But that's exactly what limited tort does. Limited tort limits your ability to make a claim for pain and suffering. It doesn't limit your ability to make a claim for financial damages, such as out-of-pocket medical expenses or wage loss. But when we look at these cases, Jeffrey, what we look at as far as the biggest part of your claim is your pain and suffering. You're worried about your condition. You're worried about how long you're going to have to go to the doctor. You're worried about whether you're actually going to recover. There's the inconvenience of taking the time out of your day and your life to get to treatment. So the pain and suffering is the biggest piece of your case. And unless you fall into an exception or get over the limited tort election, your claim is severely limited by a limited tort election, if not potentially eliminated totally.
Yeah, every time we represent a new client in an auto case and we reach out to the at-fault driver's insurance company to correspond with them and to make an initial claim for our clients, the first thing that insurance adjuster is going to ask us is to see our client's declaration page to see whether or not our client has chose full or limited tort. And I think that just shows how important it is. So we really, really encourage you to purchase full tort. Joyce, what else what else should folks be looking at as they're looking at their insurance policies moving forward?
So your liability coverage on your auto insurance is the coverage that is in place in case you are at fault in an accident. It's the amount that might be paid to someone who's injured. But that liability coverage also governs a very important part of your insurance coverage, which is your uninsured and underinsured motorist benefits. You cannot purchase more and underinsured coverage than liability coverage. So if you kind of step back to the liability coverage piece, that's basically coverage that is in place so that somebody doesn't take your house. So I think you should start by thinking, how much is your house worth? And so many people we see, a common liability coverage is $100,000. If you truly believe in, real estate values have gone up so much lately that your home is worth more than that, you should talk to your insurance agent or look into getting additional liability insurance coverage, because that also then builds into your and underinsured motorist coverage.
Yeah, I know we see sometimes, Joyce, that people will purchase maybe a certain amount of coverage. Let's just use $100,000 for liability coverage, as Joyce was just describing. But we'll also see them when they purchase underinsured or uninsured motorist coverage, which is the coverage that is protecting you if the person that hurt you doesn't have enough insurance to compensate you for what you've been through. That's when you go to your uninsured or underinsured motorist coverage. And we always encourage people to purchase as much underinsured and uninsured motorist coverage as they've purchased in liability coverage. Sometimes we'll see $250,000 in liability coverage, which means they're protecting the person that they could possibly be in an accident with more than, and only purchase $100,000 of underinsured or uninsured motorist coverage. And what happens in that situation is you're actually paying more to protect the person that you may have injured in an accident, as opposed to protecting yourself if you were injured by somebody that doesn't have enough coverage.
And the other good thing about uninsured and underinsured motorist coverage, Jeffrey, is that it protects not only you, but all of the loved ones that are in your household. So if you have, for example, grown children, or if parents are living in the household with you, all of those other coverages, even if they're not on the same policy can come into play. That's called stacking of your uninsured and underinsured motorist coverage. So stacking is also an important part of those benefits. So anytime an insurance company is asking you to take less, they're going to ask you to sign a paper. They'll ask you to sign a paper to elect limited tort, because full tort is what the law provides. They'll ask you to sign a paper to take less uninsured and underinsured coverage, or they'll ask you to sign a waiver to get out of stacking. So always make sure if somebody's asking you to sign out of something that you're reading those forms very carefully, because I do think, and we've talked about it before, Jeffrey, what we see are people that say, I don't understand what I purchased. I didn't understand when someone sold me that limited tort that if I was in an auto accident, I'd have all these limitations. So be very careful with what you're signing.
Yeah, and we recognize that these things can get expensive, and there's a lot to think about when you're purchasing auto insurance, which is why you can look at different quotes from your insurance company and make sure you have these three items in mind. The the limited tort versus full tort, the underinsured, uninsured motorist coverage as being as much as your liability coverage, and the stacking issue. You might be surprised to learn that it's not that much money to purchase these things to protect you and your family from an unfortunate accident. Joyce, can we help these folks even if they aren't involved in an accident?
Sure. And just going to the point, Jeffrey, of how complicated buying auto insurance can be, we are happy to review what's called your declaration page. And that's the paperwork that comes with your auto insurance each time that you renew the policy. Some people do it on a yearly basis, or it's every 6 months. But that paperwork will tell you exactly what coverage you have in place. And we would rather take a look at that and explain it to you when you're not in an accident, so that, again, you're prepared. If you're prepared, that's the best way to make a terrible situation, which is getting into an auto accident, less of a terrible situation, because at least you have the coverage that you need. That coverage is in place while you're potentially off work or treating or have to go through surgery, because all of those things are very stressful.
And that peace of mind is really valuable, and we really appreciate the opportunity to review those declaration pages for you. It doesn't take us a long time to do that, and we're happy to do that for you at no charge at all. We talked about what happened if you're in an accident, Joyce, and we talked about what to do going into the treatment part of it. Can we talk a little bit about the claim process? If you've come to us, some things that we want to make sure are happening at that time initially with your own insurance company, what kind of things should our clients be thinking about, Joyce?
So the claims process is what we start as soon as we meet with somebody. And I'm sure, Jeffrey, and we've talked about it so many times, by the time someone comes to our office, they've already given what's called a sworn statement to the other insurance company. We would prefer, and we tell anyone that calls us sooner rather than later, we'd rather help you through that part of the claims process. You must cooperate with your own insurance company, but if the other company calls and says to you, we want your statement, it's much, much better to have an attorney involved before you give that statement, so that someone is not able to basically kind of pull your information by asking you specific leading questions into the narrative that they want, rather than the true statement of what happened. So the claims process many times just starts with initial documentation with the insurance company. It's informal, but it's basically our office being the entity that does the communicating with the insurance company. Does a couple things for you. It gives you the benefit of our experience, but it also takes some of that red tape and paperwork off of your plate, so that you can concentrate on treating and not worry so much about the claims process.
Yeah, because when you talked about talking to the other driver's insurance company, we see it all the time that, for example, they might say to you, well, you're feeling okay now, right? And you say, because that's just a natural way of saying things, you say, yeah, I feel pretty good. I'm fine. I'm okay. We see a lot. Well, they'll take that, they'll write that down, and they'll say, talk to Mr. Smith on October 2nd, and he said he was okay. He was not injured. And that's the reason why let us handle talking to the insurance company. We'll just tell them that you're treating, and we'll be getting information to them, and that's the best way to handle that. What about the medical? Lots of times you're injured, and we talked about going to the doctors. Lots of times you think, I don't want to get into all that, going to the doctors. How are those bills paid initially, Joyce?
So a lot of people are very surprised to hear that your own auto insurance is the source of payment of your medical bills. That part of the insurance coverage is basically a no-fault part of the coverage. Many other things that we talk about are fault-related, but you have to have, under Pennsylvania law, $5,000 of medical coverage. You can buy more than that. Maybe you don't need more than that if you have a good backup private health insurance policy. But that $5,000 goes a long way, because there are also cost containment provisions in the Pennsylvania auto law that limit some of the charges that the medical providers can make. So first thing is, use your own auto insurance and the medical benefits available. It's the easiest medical insurance to use. You don't need referrals. There's no copays, no deductibles. So it makes it easy to get the treatment that you need, and you don't pay that money back to your own auto insurance company.
Yeah, and the nice thing is, like Joyce and I and James, we all have a great staff that we work with, and our staff will set up communications with your auto insurance company who are paying these bills for you and getting records in, and we'll share all that information. So it makes it nice for us to be able to see the treatment that you're getting and the bills that are being paid. And they'll also let us know when that coverage that you have is being close to being exhausted, that we can let you know you need to tell your medical providers to start using your health insurance coverage. So a lot of people, as Joyce was saying, are shocked to learn that it is their own auto that's paying initially, and that's certainly the case, and it helps us coordinate things from the beginning. What about you can't go to work, Joyce? Our clients can't go to work when they're initially injured for some time. What about their wage loss?
So under Pennsylvania law, you can also purchase lost wage insurance or income loss insurance. It's not required, but it's something that we would recommend that everyone does. Again, it takes a little bit of stress out of the initial part of your claim when you're trying to recuperate. You don't want the additional financial stress of not being able to pay your bills while you're not going to work. So it's something that kicks in after you've missed 5 full days of work, and it provides you with 80% of your lost income up to whatever type of coverage you've purchased. So usually there's a per month amount and then a total amount. But again, we recommend, if you don't have it, again, we're happy to help you take a look at that. But having that wage loss coverage in place before something happens at least helps you pay some of the bills while you're recuperating.
Yeah, and it's really been helpful for our clients, and it's not, we usually a letter from your PCP saying that you're not able to return to work is usually sufficient for your insurance company to go ahead and pay you that 80% as Joyce described. So that's something, again, you want to be looking at when you purchase your insurance if you are still working, to have that wage loss coverage, because that can make things a lot easier for you if you're not able to go to work. So we thought we'd talk a little bit too. There's a thought out there sometimes that you're in an accident and we're not able to resolve things with the other driver's insurance company for one reason or another. Maybe it's some of the issues that we talked about earlier here, and the fact that sometimes a lawsuit has to be filed, and a lot of folks are a little intimidated by that, and sometimes just knowing a little bit more about that helps ease that concern. Just how do we get lawsuits started?
So the most important thing as far as a lawsuit that we always tell our clients, Jeffrey, is that you have a 2-year statute of limitations in Pennsylvania when you have what's a suit that's basically arising out of the negligence or carelessness of someone else. So you have time to treat, and you need to know that so that you don't rush that process before you must file a lawsuit. We don't like to wait until that 2-year mark if there's any possibility of that we realize that a lawsuit's going to need to be filed. We get that process going. So you actually file a lawsuit against the other driver. It's not against the insurance company that represents them. And people maybe don't realize that. That is, if you do have a situation where you file a lawsuit, the lawsuit is filed against the individual. So if it's John Doe that hits me, it's Joyce Novotny Prettyman versus John Doe. But then John Doe's insurance company steps in and provides him with the coverage that he's purchased, that liability coverage that we talked about, as well as an attorney that will defend at no charge to that person that's been sued. That's all happening under that person's auto insurance coverage. So what are some of the situations, Jeffrey, that you found where a lawsuit is necessary?
Well, a lot of times a lawsuit becomes necessary. Someone may be treating, and there's some negotiations going on with the other driver's insurance company, but we're not quite sure when we're getting closer to that 2-year statute of limitations. We don't like to get very close to it at all, that they're still treating, so we don't know exactly what the case may be worth. We don't know exactly what fair and just compensation for our clients is. So we go ahead and file a lawsuit, and lots of times we continue to negotiate with the other driver's insurance company while that lawsuit's been filed, even if the insurance company on the other side gets counsel. So that's certainly one reason. And of course, there's the lots of times we just can't agree on what a case may be worth.
And sometimes even I think, the more complicated cases may be when you have two different drivers with two different stories about how they perceive something happened. So there could even be issues about how the collision actually happened. And a lot of times that is what is going to foster a lawsuit. But I also think it's important, Jeffrey, for people to realize that just because you file a lawsuit does not mean you're going to trial, because I do think that is something that gives our clients a lot of apprehension. They get very worried if they're to that point. But obviously, we're there to help them along the way, and it's simply another step in the process if for some reason we can't get the claim resolved within that 2-year period for whatever reason. If it's and most of the time, I think with our clients, if it's your experience as well, it's because the treatment is ongoing because the injuries are so serious.
Right. And Joyce and I have over 50 years of experience combined, and we certainly are willing and able to take your case to trial if we have to, and sometimes we do, because those issues cannot be resolved. And it's important in these cases that you have attorneys that are willing to go to court. But sometimes, but most of our clients, as Joyce said, would rather not be in court, and we do everything we can to get a favorable outcome for them without going to court. And it's funny, going full circle too, we talked about these, and Joyce had mentioned cases that go to trial, or cases such as whose fault the accident was. Recently had a case where there was a head-on collision in my client's lane, and initially the other driver said, well, I went into his lane because he was looking down and I thought he was coming into my lane. Well, at the end of the day, the insurance company said the accident happened in my client's lane. So the other car came over into our lane, and they realized they weren't going to be able to defend the case. But that case for a year went on where we were arguing about whose fault the accident was, and almost resulted in a lawsuit having to be filed. So those are the kind of situations that we run into.
And it's interesting, and I think, Jeffrey, you've probably seen it as well, how many times, and we have a private investigator that helps us at the very beginning of this whole process, either talk to witnesses or try to find out if there's any type of video surveillance in the area of the accident, because it's possible that with all of the cameras that are out there these days, what happened is actually caught on film somewhere. So that's another thing that we can do if we get the claim into our office sooner rather than later, is try to canvass the area, because that can make all the difference in the world as well.
That's a really good point. I mean, we have an investigator that we send out to accident scenes, and we're actually surprised sometimes where he will come up with video footage. Recently had a case where we were able to help a couple folks that were hit as pedestrians, and the police, when they investigated, did not have any video, and the police determined that the accident happened another way. and family of our clients said that that's impossible. Our clients wouldn't have been walking that way. And our investigator uncovered some video from a business that was a little bit further down the road, but camera surprisingly caught it. So those are the kind of things that we can certainly help you with. What other type of accident cases, Joanne? We talked a lot about auto here today, and our time is running short. What other type of accident cases do we handle?
So in our personal injury department, we also handle fall down cases, also known as premises liability cases. So if there's a crack in a sidewalk, a pothole in a parking lot in a retail area, we help people with those things. Dog bites. The other thing is we've handled trucking cases, motorcycle cases, and those have some nuanced things that are also a little different than an auto case. So various types of cases that involve someone being injured, we handle all of those types of things.
Yeah, and with those fall down cases and dog bite cases that Joyce just mentioned, a lot of the principles we just talked about apply. We want you to get some photographs of injuries that you have. If you fell down because something was defective in a parking lot at a department store or convenience store, take a picture of that and come see us and talk about it. We can see whether or not we can help you. But you definitely want to get to a doctor. You definitely want to take some photographs. You definitely want to get information from any witnesses that may be available to you, because insurance companies are not going to willingly resolve these things with you if they don't think that we can establish that they were at fault, number one, and number two, that you suffered an injury. So, Joyce and I work in our personal injury department with James Miller, and we handle all the kind of cases that we just talked about. Joyce, what other practice areas that sometimes overlap with, as our time is running out here, what other overlap with our practice area?
So an important part of what our firm can offer that I don't think a lot of other firms can is the ability, if say you're hurt in an auto accident at work, or if you're off work because your injury is so serious that you need Social Security disability or long-term disability to step in. We do all of those things in our office, and we're able to seamlessly involve another lawyer in those other practice areas, and that can be invaluable in many cases. So,
yeah, we have so many clients that maybe come to us because, as Joyce said, they were in an auto accident. They think they just have one case. They think they just have a personal injury case, and we realize they may have a workers' compensation case too, and the reverse is true. And we also have a Social Security disability department. God forbid anybody hurt that seriously, they can't go back to work. There may be a claim there, but we're certainly equipped to handle all of that.
Okay, guys, thanks for coming in today.
Thank you. Thank you.
And that was Joyce Novotny Prettyman and Jeff Monzo of Quatrini Law Group, with an office on East Main Street in Uniontown, and also an office in Somerset as well as Greensburg. And you can join them on the first and third Monday of each month at 11:25 for the Quatrini Law Group. Their phone number is 888-534-6016.
You're listening to WMBS Uniontown. Now, ladies and gentlemen, our national anthem.